So here some introduction about gears, how they come into existence and what form. So gears are for transmitting power. So you can have to replace, gears are having tooths. It is also possible to transmit power by way of having two simple rollers without any tooth. So you can see how two rollers are there. Put the two rollers together and you rotate one of them, other will rotate. It's no problem. But the issue is the torque. There is a limitation to the torque, maximum torque that can be transmitted. So actually the force is transmitted from one to the other by way of friction. If the friction, whatever force you are giving exceeds the friction force, it will only slip. So you can think of two types of such a transmission. One is say external set, another is internal set. Likewise, in gears also you will have external gears and internal gears. The difference between the two is like the direction. In external set, the input is say in clockwise, the output will be in the opposite direction. Whereas in internal, both the input and output will have same direction of rotation. So this two are something like a direct contact mechanism. Now this is quite a common way of transmitting power where there is no direct contact, there is a belt involved. So this type of belt is called V belt. The cross section would be like a V, so it is called V belt. So you, in washing machines or your grinders, for connecting the motors to the drum, you have these kind of V belts. And these V belts, both the input and output will rotate in same direction. There is no reversal in this case. Now if you think of a gear and a belt like this and try to draw the equivalent 4 bar, you can see that here it is the one when the direction is reversed. It's like an anti-mechanism, anti-parallelogram type of mechanism. It's not parallelogram mechanism. Only if the gear ratio is 1:1, you can think of a parallelogram mechanism equivalent. But the direction is reversed here, whereas in belt it is preserved. So this is how a gear would look like. So when you take a set of gears, the one which is having a smaller diameter is called a pinion, the other one is called a gear. Okay. So what is the difference of this kind of a gear what we use in modern days and the one which is used in primitive old days, like when they were using water for transmission or production of power? There used to be a gear with a simple wheel. On the wheel you will have wooden pegs. Okay, there will be pegs like this and other pegs in this direction. So like this, one peg engages here and pushes. The gears were made not with a form of involute or something like that. You have simple wheel and wooden pegs were there, a number of pegs in this order in a particular space, and other engaging wheel will have another peg. So these two pegs will come and contact and turn. So next it will separate, other peg will come. But In the use of the peg, the velocity, angular velocity is not uniform throughout its rotation. There will be variations. So that is the issue. Whereas when you use involute and all that, it will be conserved. Velocity will not vary in every angle, every degree of rotation. So law of gearing works. But what is the basic difference between the one I discussed, two friction rollers or the belt drive, and this one? Okay, let me tell you what is the name of classification, how these belt drive, friction drives are classified. They are classified as non-positive drives. Non-positive drives. Whereas the gears and chains are called positive drives. You have the drives which are used to transmit motion are classified as either positive drives or non-positive. Remember, it is not negative. You also know in fluid mechanics, in the case of pumps, you have positive displacement pumps, and the other group is not negative displacement pump, it is called a non-positive displacement pump. A reciprocating pump is a positive displacement pump, whereas a centrifugal pump is non-positive. Similarly here, in drives also, positive drives and non-positive drives. Positive drives are gears and say chains. Whereas in non-positive drives, you can say belts or friction rollers. Why do you classify this? What distinguishes, the positive and non-positive drives? So what is a positive pump and non-positive pump? So irrespective of the discharge pressure at the end, if you are able to keep your delivery or flow rate as constant, that is called a positive pump. In a reciprocating pump, whatever water is taken will be pushed irrespective of what is the discharge you get. Whether it is low or high, it will push. Whereas in a non-positive like centrifugal pump, it will not discharge. Discharge will vary depending on the head. Similarly here, in positive drives, irrespective of the load, whatever the input you give with a particular ratio, the output will turn. Positively it will turn. Suppose I have a gear of 1:1. I turn the input gear by say 10 degrees. The output gear will essentially turn 10 degrees irrespective of the load. Whereas in the case of non-positive drives like friction drives, if the load is more or if it is very high beyond a particular limiting value, the input can rotate but output will not rotate. What will lead to a friction, a slipping condition. That is a non-positive drive. In some places, non-positive drive is preferred because if the load is unpredictably high, if it is very high, the input will be the motor, the actuator will burn, the input motor will burn. What happens in your grinder? The grinder grinding load, the torque required will increase when the water level comes down. Water is getting absorbed by your grind, especially your rice. Slowly, as the water is absorbed, it will become viscous. As its viscosity increases, the torque required, that load, the torque required to move increases. But the motor cannot keep on giving you the torque that is required. It has a limiting torque. So the motor will be locked up if I have a positive drive, and the motor will burn out. As the load, like in your grinder, keeps on, the torque requirement increases, the motor, if it is not able to supply, what will happen is that the motor will be burnt out. Suppose you use a non-positive drive, in that case, the belt will slip, protecting the motor. Okay? So, if the input angle is particular value, the output angle relationship is fixed, then it is called a positive drive. In case of, if it is not fixed, it depends on the load, etc., it's a non-positive drive. Okay, one is positive, another is non-positive. So gears are positive drive, the input-output relationship is perfectly fixed. You have any doubts? Now, okay, if you have doubt, you can ask. Now what I am going to do is, I will just discuss, various types of gears and certain salient features of it. Okay? Because if I go into the theoretical aspect, that is heavy, so we will just limit ourselves to some lighter aspect of gear, that is the types of gears. Gears are not, available in one type. There are various types available. They have unique features. So this is a gear. So this is called a spur gear. How do you call? What is the definition of a spur gear? You look at the gear tooth, and you look at the axis of the gear. It is made of a circular blank. You can think of an axis through which a shaft is there, and it is going to rotate with respect to the. So there is a rotational axis or the shaft axis, and the axis of tooth, if they are parallel, then you call it as a spur gear. So definition wise, the tooths and the axis are parallel. The advantage of a spur gear is it is easy to manufacture, and the efficiency is high. The efficiency of spur gear is in the order of 98%. It can go up to 98 to 99%. So that is means that spur gears are highly efficient. But it has one disadvantage. The disadvantage is that there is a pinion which engages. This is a tooth, which is another tooth, which are parallel. They will engage in full and disengage in full. Full whole length there is an engagement. The whole length it is disengaged. So it will create a little bit of noise. It is efficient, but there will be a noise. So there is a variation to this spur gear, is that instead of putting this axis parallel, I will put it in an inclined way, so that when they are inclined, they will engage first initial to the end, and then they will mesh up to the other extent. Okay, when they engage, they are inclined like this, they will engage in the first in the portion, and then it will extend to the full length. So that will reduce the noise. That is, this gear, you can see the tooths are at an angle to the axis. This angle is called helix angle. This type of gear is helical. It's called a helical gear. The advantage, as I said, the helical gear will have a smooth operation. So now the noise will be less. But it has a unique disadvantage. The disadvantage is like when the force is transmitted perpendicular to this, if you look at that, this is the tooth axis, this is my axis of rotation. So force will be transmitted, net force will be transmitted along the tooth. It will have, you can split that into two components. Okay, so it will have a component like this. So the component of the force, this is your force, it will have a component along or tangent to the axis, and another component normal. What about a spur gear? Spur gear is, the force will be always tangent to the axis. All the force is tangent to the axis. Whereas here, because of the angle, helix angle, this force will produce as an axial component. So helical gears requires a bearing which can take up the axial component, and they are not so efficient. The efficiency is little less, 96%. So slightly less. Now you can see the other type of gear is also comes under the helical gear, but it looks like a bone of a fish, herring bone. Okay, so you can see it is, if I close one of this, half of this, what I see is a helical gear. I have two helical gears kept side by side, but their angle are opposite. Why? What is the advantage? When you have that, what will happen is you have the tooth on the other side, that will also produce the same force. It will have an axial component and tangential component. So this Fn and this Fn will cancel each other. The axial components will cancel each other. The helical gear has a disadvantage, it will produce an axial component. That is removed in the case of a herringbone gear, where the axial components produced by one part of the helix is removed by the other part. They will produce equal and opposite, they will cancel. So such herringbone gears are used for very large power applications, like in marine engines or in power transmission. So you say, I have a 250 megawatt turbine, you have a gearbox that transmits 250 megawatts. So such places we use helical gear, but not helical, but we use a herringbone gear for large transmission. If there is a gap between the two, see, the herringbone gear is like this, both the tooths are immediately in engagement. Suppose I have an arrangement like this. I have one gear and there is a small gap. There is another gear. The tooths are, this is a helical gear, their forms are like this. If there is it's like a herringbone gear, but there is a small gap, then it is called a double helical gear. Okay? Double helical gear or herringbone gear are almost the same, but the small difference is, in a herringbone gear you will have no gap between the two helical gears, but if there is a small gap, then it is called double helical gear. Now this is a helical gear, how it will look like. And here you see that two shafts, the input shaft and output shafts are parallel. Now, whether it is to be parallel all the time, it need not be. In a helical gear, it can be at an angle also. It can be sometimes 90 degrees. The input shaft and output shafts are offset, but at the 90 degrees, you can still use a helical gear. This helical gear is called crossed helical gear. It's crossed helical. The helical, next we have seen herringbone or double helical. The fourth one you have seen is a crossed helical. Cross helical is these things are 90 degrees each other. It can transmit. The efficiency is so poor that it can be as low as 50%. So it is not for power transmission purpose, but it is where just to transmit motion you can use this. Now we have the other type of a gear, which is called worm gear. Okay, so we have fifth one, worm and worm wheel. This one is called worm. This is a worm wheel. What is the speciality of this? If you keep on increasing the helix angle, then at one critical point it will become a continuous thread. It looks like a screw thread only. So the number of tooth in a worm is only 1. In a double start it can be 2, but it is not like you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not like that. Here you can count number of tooths are 1, 2, 3, 4, but here it is only 1 thread or 2 thread. So here only 1 thread like this, it is like a screw. So it is primarily meant for transmitting power at 2 axes which are non-intersecting but 90 degrees. They are at 90 degrees. The gear tooth profile is not perfect involute. So there is a lot of sliding. So these 2 gears are made of especially a low friction material like phosphor bronze. So these 2 are to be replaced as a matched pair. You cannot say worm wheel I will replace, worm I will replace separately. They are to be matched or replaced as a set. Okay. It has a unique, there are other 2 unique advantages or features of it. It has a very high speed reduction ratio. Say 1:120 is quite normal. If you have a spur gear, the maximum reduction ratio allowed in one stage is 1:8. Only the speed can be increased by 8 times or decreased by 8 times in one set. One pinion and gear can do the speed reduction or increase by 1:8. But here in a worm and worm wheel, in one stage, you can go up to 120. Very large speed reductions are possible. There is another unique advantage or unique feature of this is it cannot be back driven. It cannot be back driven. What is a back drive? Say in a spur gear set or helical gear set, you can take one shaft as the input, then other one will become output. If I give an input to the other one, this will become an input. That is, you can use either of this as an input or output. That means it can be back driven. Whereas worm and worm wheel cannot be back driven. Your input can be only to the worm. The output will be through the worm wheel. You cannot give an input here and make it this to rotate. This is like you are, as I told you, in a screw and a nut. So self-locking or non-self-locking. Some of the screw threads, if I move the screw, nut will move forward, but if I move the nut, the screw will not rotate. Okay? So I have sent you one of the video from iGoose of a non-self-locking screw. The nut will simply fall. Okay? When you move the nut, this will rotate. The reverse is possible. Okay? So here the non-self-locking, this is an advantage. When you are using this as for a crane. For a crane, there is a motor and you have the worm and worm wheel as a gearbox. Then it is lifting a heavy load. You think of a situation where power fails. If it is a non-self-locking or not, it's a back driven, it will simply go down. What is the going down means? It will fall. If the power goes off or anything wrong with your motor, it fails to produce a torque, this thing will fall. Whereas if it is non-back driven or it is a self-locking, you can lift the load. If the power goes, the load cannot come down on its own. Okay? Only way to bring down is to change the rotation of the direction of the worm wheel. So in such situations like lifting the load in the crane, worms and worm wheel has a unique advantage, but it has a very high speed reduction ratio in single stage so that it can be very compact. At the same time, it is non-back driven so that in the event of power failure, it will not fall. Okay? So we will continue this